Welcome to the Culture Chat hosted by WorkXO. Our mission is to upgrade work. Find out more about our Workplace Genome Project at workxo.com. And now, over to our host for today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Culture Chat podcast. My name is Jamie Notter. I'm with WorkXO. I am here, as usual, with my partner in crime, Charlie Judy. Say hi, Charlie.
What's up, everybody?
And we're having an excellent conversation today with Javon Hackley from Student Loan Genius. I'm really excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking a little bit about employee benefits and their relationship to culture. I'm going to put out there, actually, right away that I hope this conversation is going to go a little deeper than, hey, we should give good benefits, because I don't think that's enough these days. So I'm curious to hear actually what both Charlie and Javon have to say about this. So Charlie, let me kick it over to you to sort of set us up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so good day, everyone. Jamie, thanks for kicking it off. Javon, thanks for being here. You know, one of the things that I really love about this podcast that we do is that I get reminded by how many ways there are to make an impact in the world of work. You know, I'll be the first to admit that the first 25 years of my career were relatively, traditional. There was a kind of a straight path, and it was kind of an up, and yeah, I've done a lot of work with employee benefit plans, or employee benefits, broadly. But we've got a guy today who has kind of found a way to turn that on its ear a little bit, and has also done some really awesome things throughout his career, which makes his profile so damn dynamic that it sometimes makes me a little jealous and angry. It's why I can't go on Facebook anymore, because I feel like everybody has a better life than I do. Javon is one of those guys that I would not want to follow on Facebook. So, Javon, if you could just take a few minutes to just set the stage on who you are, how you got here, kind of what your burning platform is. And then we'll kick into it. And again, thanks for being here.
Awesome, and thank you guys for having me so very much. I guess the easiest way to explain me and my career, or the common thread, is I'm addicted to doing good. And so where there's an opportunity to help people, primarily as a marketer and PR person, I get attracted, get addicted, get involved. About a year and some change ago, I said I would never do a startup again. I was working for a big data startup, transitioning out, and ran into three awesome individuals who founded what we know today as Student Loan Genius about 3 years ago. And that's really pulled on all the experiences. I was an association guy for a while, and worked in tech startup, and then an agent training manager for a really large company that wanted to build, client love to help engage and educate and help them do their jobs better. And that's all sort of fed into this current conversation of how do we create and craft a benefits environment where employees are getting the help that they need and engage with companies in a healthy way. And so not just driving work in terms of productivity, but can we improve this relationship between employers and employees? And so Student Loan Genius aims to be a part of that puzzle, one tool in what I call a very large toolbox of HR professionals to help their employees with student loans through student loan benefits, and solve America's $1.3 trillion student loan problem. And so our goal is, whether they're offering our financial wellness tool or one of our matching services, to help the company and the employee develop a longer relationship. There's some custom vesting and all things that can go into there, but all of that's sort of a tool, or the tangible hands of the heart of creating a better relationship between employees and employers. And so I'm excited to talk about how benefits fit into this culture, and some of what we've seen with the HR directors we're talking to and engaging with, number one, and number two is some of the gaps. I've got this rare opportunity of being a millennial, but sort of in a sweet spot of, I did not have the internet growing up, but I've worked in tech and seen this fast growth. And so I've got an interesting lens of how we're crafting this benefit and some of the resources, because it's not all technology for us. There's one-on-one human contact. There are actually launch meetings where we go and we talk to clients. And so we've developed our mix from the strategy of trying to make sure that, you don't get too overwhelmed with the widgets, number one, but number two is that the connections that we build are real, sustaining, and that they really do help the companies advance their brand and culture. And so excited to talk to you guys today.
Cool, awesome. So let's get into it. We have, as usual, we have our one big question that we're going to talk about, and it is how can employee benefits really become a tool for impacting culture? The only thing I'll add to that is just the one sentence, even less than one sentence definition of culture. I mean, culture is about what's valued inside an organization. And I think a strong culture is one that aligns what's valued with what drives success. So in the context of that, Javon, we'll ask you to kick it off. How can employee benefits become a really effective tool for impacting culture?
So here's what's funny about your question, Jamie. I would love to copy edit the question itself, because whether employers realize it or not, every experience, every touch point between an employee and a company drive the holistic view of the company, number one, and the culture overall. And so the notion that employee benefits haven't been a part of culture is probably a red flag, gray area, a black hole that I would love to close, because I think too many employers think that, hey, there's culture on one side and there's benefits on another, not realizing that they're an essential piece and part of the puzzle. Because honestly, if you're like me, you've been through your 20s and you've dated a bit. And when you date in your early 20s, it's all about the dream and how people look and more aesthetic. And as you get to the end, you want to connect with someone hopefully you can build a life and a longer relationship with, who honestly looks, feels, and then demonstrates that they are the person that you want to be with. And benefits are part of one of a few experiences that employers provide that, symbolize the latter. It's the late 30s dating where things get more serious, and if I'm really going to spend some real time with you or make a real investment in you, then I'm going to need to know that you are really vested in my welfare and well-being. And so, I guess my first edit there is like, these benefits have been a part of culture, whether or not employers have realized it. And the question that I would throw back to any employer is like, what do your benefits say about you? Our benefits, one of, a few that are coming into the game to help, close gaps and advance, employees' lives. But the employers that we see signing on have a different attitude about benefits. They're not just trying to recruit with widgets. They're really looking at a larger perspective. They've got financial wellness budgets and other wellness budgets that sort of span the gamut of caring about their employees, because they realize that at some point your hands have to match your heart.
So, a couple of things. I wish I would have known how dating and marriage was supposed to work a long time ago. And thanks for setting that out there for everybody. This may be just
trying, Charlie. I'm just trying.
No, I love it. I mean, maybe we ought to just talk about that instead. But so one of the things that Jamie didn't mention, although of course it's implicit, about our cultural definition is that it's not only what's valued, but the culture can really help reinforce and clarify what's valued. And we see organizations who, for all of the right reasons, are intentional about trying to create meaningful experiences for their people, and yet they'll have this benefits plan sitting over in the corner and not realize that it's actually because of the way that it's designed or the way that it's used or the way that it's communicated around, or et cetera, can actually be in direct conflict with the kind of culture that they're trying to build, to foster, cultivate. Can you give some examples, Javon, of how those two things can actually be in with each other? I mean, I think we all agree that they have to do with each other. Can you talk about how they may be in conflict?
So the conflict between the benefits and the culture, I guess my best example of that is I will use a personal example because I've had the privilege of being an employee of some awesome organizations. So I got to be a part of a fast-growing startup named Trulia.com, small search engine, when I got there in 2011 maybe. And when I got there, their benefits were completely outsourced to one of the major providers. There was a skeleton HR staff, and at some point they realized that this was a real problem for those of us who were being onboarded. I had a negative experience with that benefits service provider on being somebody that's coming across the country and relocating to take a job. Like it was horrible for me. And on that feedback and the feedback of probably tons of others at the time, they made a shift toward an internal benefits team that got built out, some service providers that helped, but really taking more ownership of that. And in talking to some of the HR directors, I've had to revisit those conversations with those guys based on what we offer now. I've learned that was very intentional because the experience that we were getting as an employee was ruining, from a benefits perspective, was ruining sort of the taste of getting a new job. And so you get a new job and everybody says, everything's awesome. You get the presentation, they give you some swag, a free bag and a free sweatshirt. And then you've got this horrible sign-on process that takes 2 to 3 weeks to iron out. And, if it doesn't get ironed out right, your money could be late and all kinds of other negative things happen related to health care and health insurance. And so for people who have families or, are doing major moves like me across the country, it was a horrible, taste. It was a bitter aftertaste of getting a sweet new job. And that's one of those cases where it was, in conflict. In the same right, we've seen some of our companies, Student Loan Genius, that are trying to overcome challenges because they're coming out of startup phase or coming through some major business transition related to the recession. And as they start to look at, okay, how do we build the continuity to insulate ourselves, for the future and really compete in our market, we've got to have a holistic employee care program, because if you're doing business in San Francisco or New York, these wellness budgets are huge for your Googles and your Microsofts and whoever else you're up against. And so these small companies are trying to piece together and really build the puzzle of their own experience so that they don't have people walking out of the door because there's free food down the street. And so, honestly, that conflict is inherent just because benefits are so nuts and bolts. Like, there's legally what employers get tax deductions for and things that they offer as a consequence of it's always been done that way, whether that's a 401k plan or dental benefits. And the other side of the fence, where if we really cared about the employee, how does that change what we do and what we provide? And so, you've got Trulius who decide that because we care about the employee, we've got to change the way that we offer benefits and handle this administration of benefits. And on the other side, you've got folks that say, hey, if we just plug and play, honestly, I call that, there's a lot of, if I had to pick out an industry where there's like a lot of plug and playing, government contractors, like there's plug and play, standard carte blanche benefits you get that sort of, really just cover the basics. And in those situations, they're in conflict because you have a lot of leaders that really do care, but it doesn't really show up in one of the most critical ways for employees.
And and this is actually a question to Charlie too, because of your experience in the trenches in HR for so long. But I think, I look at organizations and in sort of embracing the digital mindset that we wrote about in When Millennials Take Over, like, this is a focus on the user. This is a focus on the employee. I would expect that customization is now becoming standard, but I would also guess that that's a real pain when it comes to benefits. So is that being resolved? I mean, are folks actually building in customized stuff on a regular basis?
So my question to you both would be, what is customization? When you say customization, like how tailored are we talking when it comes down to benefits?
Yeah, I mean, these are great questions. And let me see if I can answer generally and maybe throw a specific or two out there. I do think that there's always this continuum when you look at programmatic responses to the workplace. So things that we all can identify with pretty readily, and most of us are have been familiar with for years and years. Stuff like benefit plans, and let's just make this easy and call healthcare plans. There's this continuum, that employers have options around, and they've got to make a choice, right? They can live on one end of the spectrum and say, you know what, we choose, for benefit plans not to be a differentiator for us, and we're going to choose to invest elsewhere. There's the other end of the spectrum, which says we want this to be a differentiator for us. We want it to be a part of the experience, a visible and tangible part of the experience. And then there's, of course, everything in between. The problem is when employers don't make a conscious decision about where they want to be on that continuum, and that they don't understand the implications of choosing where they want to be on that continuum. So I would say that there are many organizations that are making the conscious decision to have a more customized experience in the realm of employee benefits. And that could mean a lot of things. It could mean more choices. It could mean even option to completely shift the level of coverage and the provider networks. And I mean, certainly there are lots of new ways to customize benefit plans. As long as that's an important thing for, again, supporting what is the broader goal, objective, ambition of your culture, I think that's okay. Just as much as I think it's okay to take the other end of the spectrum, which is, guys, we're going to be bare bones on this benefits plan because we're going to invest in other things that should be part of your experience and we believe are more important to this culture. I think that's kind of what what I was getting at, Javon, in this whole conflict. It's you got to understand what you're implementing and what the implications are to the rest of your organization, irrespective of what it is, in fact, you're implementing. I guess that was kind of my point.
Well, and it's funny, Charlie, as you're talking, I started to think that I would love to sort of take issue with one part of that argument, and that's
Please do.
This whole idea or construct of a plan, okay? Plans and providers and coverage amounts and deductibles, very tangible things that the CFOs and those that have to deal with the numbers really do have to think about and discuss, and that's great. But let's not forget what the heart of employee benefits was or has been for the last 40 to 50 years. We saw the surge in 401k coming out of the 60s into the 70s because we realized that people were going to need help retiring. The employees, the people that helped drive our business had a need, and so we found a way to meet the need. In the same way tuition assistance came about, employees had a need for more education. In the 80s, since the 80s, we've almost, I think that numbers behind how many people are college educated and in the workforce have jumped almost 20% because employers realize that we need a more educated workforce. There's an issue. Our employees need to be smarter and better in this new technology environment, so we're going to invest in them and solve a problem. If we look at benefits as solving a problem and get away from this whole plan and coverage and administrator and who provides it, then it really does open us up to do some really important work, number one, in terms of making employees' lives better, but number two is to see the real connection between culture and benefits. One of the things that I like to sort of quote or cite is there was a Merrill Lynch study last year that showed that about 80% of employees look to their employers for financial benefits financial guidance. So if their company provides financial benefits help, they're likely to take advantage of it. The things that are in that financial package, like retirement's in that package, tuition assistance is in that package, health is in it, those are the things that they consider and think are important. And so when there are holes in what we provide in terms of the benefits package or the benefits overall, then the employees are inclined to think that things that aren't in that package aren't necessarily important, number one. And number two is if they've got a need that falls outside of that that's critical, like a student loan problem or anything else, maybe healthcare, like I love what Teledocs is doing with healthcare, then, they're kind of left to themselves to deprioritize that, whether that's health that gets deprioritized or student loan debt, which gets deprioritized or whatever it is. And so, if the employer ignores the problem, then we've really locked ourselves into the structure of thinking about plans and forgetting the heart of it, which is benefits, which is solving problems for employees. And so, if you're solving problems for employees, that's an obvious culture connection. And if you're not, then honestly, whatever you're doing is probably missing the boat in some major ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we are. I'm not sure we disagree there at all. I'm not sure you took exception necessarily. I think a lot of this.
I want to disagree with you. No, I'm joking.
Well, no, I mean, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, we can start it right now. I mean, let's go.
It's good for TV.
This is no longer going to be the culture chat. It's going to be the culture slam down.
Culture conflict.
Culture conflict. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there's a whole conversation around really what is the employer's responsibility, right? I mean, there's a difference between responsibility and making a difference. And I don't know, maybe Jamie, maybe you can say a few words around, let's carve out the millennial workforce. We know that they are the latest entrants to our workforce. We know that they are coming in droves in large numbers. And they all have their own, interests and needs. And maybe this bridges the conversation to the student loan thing, which I think is fascinating. And I don't really know a whole lot about, so I'd love to hear Javon talk a little bit more about that. But what do millennials care about healthcare, man? They're 20-somethings. They're great. They take care of themselves, right? I mean, this is like the last thing that they care about. Or am I wrong on that? What do you know?
Well, I think healthcare is sort of relevant to everyone. It's less relevant to young folks in general. So that's a life stage thing rather than a millennial thing. But from a millennial perspective, actually, when listening to Javon talk about like benefits, the reason we have benefits is to solve our problems for employees.
Yeah, I love that.
But honestly, I think of Boomer and maybe Xer managers that are like, well, yeah, I got enough problems to solve. That I got to start solving all of my employees' problems. I mean, this is a pushback I hear between, honestly, Boomers and millennials. The millennials have raised the bar, right? Like when your basic needs are met, you start looking for higher order needs. And I think that's, or at least that's what came into my mind when Javon was saying that. It's okay. You want to solve you have needs that we need to address. Fine. Here's some salary. Like, go solve your own problems, right? Like that's old school thinking. And I think I don't think in general the way our approach to benefits has really evolved, other than I got to do healthcare, so here's some healthcare. And if we shifted to say, okay, what are your problems? Let me solve them. You've got a multi-generational workforce, so your benefits are going to have to cover a lot of different things. And I think that's a trend we're heading to, because the millennials are going to show up in the workforce and expect that, of course, you're going to meet my needs and that 55, 60-year-old employee down the hall at the same time. And I feel like we're not ready to do that as much as we should be. And Javon was sort of putting it out there like, well, of course, it's about solving our employees' problems. And I think a lot of organizations haven't even gotten to that point when it comes to benefits.
Well, I think that's right. So, I mean, yeah, and that's the scary part. That's the hard work too. Javon, I mean, I think you said earlier let's talk about problems that we're trying to solve. And I think we're at our 20-minute mark, which means that this has been a great conversation. And as always, we don't have enough time. But I would like to hear you talk a little bit about the $1.3 trillion problem you referred to earlier, which is the student loan situation. Tell me how that is now transcending into the workplace and what employers should be thinking about.
So I guess the easiest way to couch this quickly in the conversation is that when an employee is financially stressed, data shows that 47% of employees are spending 2 to 3 hours a week on personal financial issues. That's lost productivity. Those turned into lost productivity and wasted dollars for those that need sort of that bottom line connection, number one. And number two is anybody that's in a stressful situation isn't going to stay in that situation, and they're going to do anything they can to do to get out of that stressful situation. That's human nature, whether that's leaving a job, whether that's, changing the financial situation. And a lot of times the quickest way or the easiest way that the millennials and others think is, hey, let's just level it up. Let's just go somewhere and make more money. What we aim to do is to help employers provide a deeper connection to what we know is the largest personal financial crisis that millennials are having. 70% of graduates have student loans. That $1.3 trillion problem today is going to become $2.4 trillion in 2024, according to the Congressional Budget Office. And so what we're helping provide is a holistic benefit that helps employers solve the problem the right way for employees. And when I say the right way, it's not just about throwing money at someone's student loans. The first piece of it is Genius Advisor that comes with all levels of service, and that's a financial wellness tool where you can see all your loans in one place, manage all your loans in one place, and get expert advice on finding the right repayment program for you. So looking at all your factors and what you tell us your financial goals are to make sure that every year you're on the right repayment plan for your family size and income size and what you say you want to do for the long term. And then the two matching services are cool because the Genius Match is what we call it, lets employers contribute money towards a student loan balance, and then the Save feature, which is in beta and rolling out. And it's cool because the borrower makes their student loan payment, and then that triggers a 401k investment. And so employers are getting to use those unused 401k dollars, number one, but number two is creating a better habit of financial wellness and investing with the employee. And so there's a lot of benefits, and I could talk all day about, how that helps companies. But honestly, if you have a company that says they're concerned about their employees and culture and concerned about productivity, and they're employing or recruiting millennials what's funny is it's not just millennials, 30 to 49, that's where 50% of the debt lies, ages 30 to 49. And so with that, if recruiting is a big challenge for you and if employee wellness is a big challenge for you, then this is something that we say, it's not if you do it, it's just when you're going to do it. And that's all for, a solution to that biggest problem of student loans, whether that's and it applies if an employee has it, the whole family has it. So immediate family, mom and dad, if there are plus loans in play, like all that gets wrapped into it.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think we are about out of time. Any last comments there, Charlie, before we wrap up?
No, I was just going to make, I think, so my guess is, and certainly my career as a HR executive, ended only a year and a half ago, but I can tell you that, and maybe I was way far behind the curve, but I can tell you that student loans were not on my radar screen. I mean, they may have been, very fundamentally, but I think you're highlighting a challenge and really potentially a real risk to culture. I'm glad that we've had this conversation.
4% of HR directors were offering student loan benefits in 2014, and our company count has increased about 175% since that time, because it's as the realizations come and people realize how accessible the benefit is, like they're acting. But honestly, it's one of those cases where, again, what Jamie said, taking the mindset away from the plans that we've typically dealt with to, if we cared, what would we do? It's one of those things that definitely comes into play for most to have that mindset.
No, I agree, and I really am. I want to thank you, Giovanna, for hanging out with us today. This was a very cool conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time, and for those of you listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for subscribing, either on our blog at workxo.com, where you can get access to this, or through Podbean, or through iTunes, where you can get the podcast. That is going to wrap it up for today. I guess I will close with one theme that came out of this conversation that really has been coming up in a lot of the conversations I've been having in organizations right now, which is the bar is being raised, folks. Okay, like we are not moving fast enough to figure out how to get over this higher bar. We're sort of going, oh, gee, the bar is raising. What do we do? We need organizations to be the ones that are like, of course the bar is raised. Here's how we're getting over it. I think this is sort of one piece of that. There's more to it. But I think it's time that we all stepped up. And so this is a piece of that. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. And join us again on our next episode of the Culture Chat podcast.
And that was the Culture Chat today. We'll have some highlights up on the blog soon. Find out more about WorkXO and how to map your workplace genome at workxo.com.